I kind of got the idea for this talk because I've talked to a lot of students over the years, and I hear a lot of complaints about people who started to use Lightroom and they get into trouble, or they wonder what's going on and they make a mess, and lots of bad things can happen in Lightroom. And so what I want to do is kind of take a step back, go behind the scenes of Lightroom, and I want to give you guys kind of the main things I wish I had known when I first started using Lightroom to avoid all the problems that a lot of people run into. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in and take a look. Well, what we're going to do is we're kind of going to talk a little bit about Lightroom, talk about how it works behind the scenes, and then we're actually going to get into the program. I want to show you guys what a catalog is, show you where photos go, how to import things, kind of walk you through the basic workflow in a way that will ensure that you are going to stay organized and avoid creating messes for yourself later on. So the first thing we can do is we can break Lightroom up into three main components. There are kind of three parts that together make up Lightroom. The first of these is the program or the application. And this is just like any other application on your computer, whether it's Microsoft Word or your web browser, Safari, or Internet Explorer, whatever it happens to be. It's simply a program, and programs just do things. That's what they're there for. They open something, they work with it, and they close it down. The second part are the images, and if we're working with a program like Photoshop or Picasa or many of those other applications, those two pieces, the images and the program, are all you have to worry about, and it's a very simple interface. You open things into the program, you alter them in some way, and you save them back down. The problem with Lightroom is, and the reason that a lot of people get into trouble, is because of this third part, which is the catalog. And the catalog makes things really amazing in that it gives us some really nice bonuses. We can use the program in ways that we aren't able to use Photoshop. But it also can create a lot of messes. And I think that's kind of the main topic of the day is mess avoidance, how we get away from doing that. So let's look at these each in turn and see what elements and what we have to do here. So let's take the program first. So just like any other program on your computer, Lightroom is no different. There's no fancinesses about it. It's just an application. It opens things, it modifies those same things, and then it saves them to the computer, just like all programs do. In the case of Lightroom, the program's opening not your photographs, but actually the catalog. And this is the thing that a lot of people don't understand. When you're working with Photoshop, you go File, Open. You are navigating around your computer to open a specific photograph, a specific image. In Lightroom, we're actually opening the catalog, that third piece that we need to talk a little bit about, which can provide some and present some interesting problems. One thing, we're going to talk a lot today about where we store things, where we store these different pieces, and that becomes really important when we have these three elements of our storage locations. To keep it simple, programs should live on your internal hard drive. All right? If you have 4 computers, you'll have Lightroom installed on the internal hard drive of each of those 4 computers. Okay? The second part, the images, probably the simplest for most of us to understand. Your images are they're edited and they're just like any other pictures on your computer. There's nothing that, images that are part of Lightroom, that are imported into Lightroom, are no different than any other pictures on your computer. Pretty simple. All right. Lightroom can edit either RAW images or JPEGs, depending on what your camera shoots. I'm a huge proponent of RAW. I think that if you're using Lightroom and you're using Lightroom as your image editing software, you should be shooting RAW. I think the advantages are really big there, especially when we start editing and looking at and that kind of thing. All right. So here's the thing we got to understand. The images do not live inside of Lightroom. And this is something that we're going to refer back to again and again and again. But some programs like iPhoto or Aperture, or programs like that, when you import images into the program actually takes those images and kind of steals them away and puts them in this little hidden folder on your computer that you can't access. Lightroom's very different. The images that are in Lightroom are just living somewhere on your computer, whether it's an external or an internal. The only thing that makes them in Lightroom is that Lightroom knows about them. Lightroom can work with them. And we'll explore that relationship quite a bit here as we get along. All right, the third piece, and this I think is the most important for a thorough understanding of Lightroom, is how this catalog works. So here's the deal. There's a really great analogy for how catalogs in Lightroom work, and it harkens back to the old days of libraries. Okay, so I want to paint this picture for us to help us fully grasp what this catalog is. Back in the day, we had card catalogs in libraries before computers came along. And in this analogy, what I want to do is say that the pictures are images on our computer. Let's make those the books on the shelves at the library. Pretty simple, okay? When you wanted to find a book back in the day, you'd go to the card catalog, find the corresponding card, and it would point you to the book you were looking for. The card catalog in the library is exactly the same as Lightroom's catalog. They're the same, you can think of them the exact same way, all right? And what I mean by that is, it remembers where the books are stored. The Lightroom catalog remembers where your images are stored, but it doesn't contain the actual image. It doesn't contain the actual book. It contains the title of the book, the author of the book. In this case, it contains some information about the photo, but not the actual, this pixel is this color, this pixel is that color. And that's a little bit hard for some people to wrap their brain around. The catalog does not actually contain the photographs, okay? It only contains what we could call pointers, or the locations of your images. All right. Let's continue on a little bit here. So, like I said before, the program, it opens and it interacts with the catalog. So we need to draw a little bit of a flow chart here and look at the order of what interacts with what works with what. So the program, its primary function is to run the whole thing of Lightroom, make sure everything functions properly. It also opens a catalog into it. So anytime you start Lightroom, when you click the little Lightroom button on your dock or your desktop or in your applications folder, as soon as you do that, Lightroom is looking around your computer and it's finding a catalog and it's launching that catalog into Lightroom. And as soon as that catalog gets launched, the catalog then goes and finds the images. And this flowchart continues throughout the program. That's exactly how we're working with things. Program always opens catalog. Catalog then points to or references the images themselves. All right, so this brings me to, throughout today's lecture, I'm going to talk about 4 major ways people get into trouble in Lightroom and how to avoid those things. And this gets me to the first one, okay? Common problem number 1, moving images without telling Lightroom. So this is the classic scenario. This is the thing I've seen hundreds of times from students over the years. Here's the deal, okay? Let's paint a picture of this with the library example, our little analogy here. Got all these books on the shelves. Card catalog knows the locations of all the books. Pretty simple setup. One night, the person who's restocking the library, putting all the books back on the shelves, just forgets what they're doing. They put a couple books in the wrong place, maybe a shelf over, maybe 2 shelves over, but the books are not where the card catalog thinks. What's going to happen, right? We're going to lose the pictures. The person coming in the next day in the library is going to go to that card catalog. They're going to find the book they want and be all happy, Dewey Decimal System numbers, march down, find the right aisle. The book's not going to be there, all right? And this exact same thing happens with Lightroom. And this is where those little question marks appear in Lightroom and the little message that says this file is offline or missing. All these scary things in Lightroom happen because people move things without telling Lightroom they moved them. So let me give you a clearer picture of this. You've got a folder of images sitting somewhere on your computer that has been imported into Lightroom, which means Lightroom now knows where those pictures live. It knows about that set of images. One night you go on late at night and you think, I'm going to get organized today. I'm going to clean up my Lightroom catalog. I'm going to make everything beautiful. And without going through Lightroom, without getting into the program of Lightroom, you go into that folder of images, maybe through the Finder or through Windows Explorer, through the operating system of your computer, and you rename things and move things and reorganize things. And what are you left with when you open Lightroom the next day? Everything is missing. Everything has a question mark next to it because there's now a disconnect between images and catalog. And that's something that we have to avoid. So the moral of this whole thing is that when you want to move things, when you want to rename things and reorganize things, you got to do it in Lightroom, and we'll look at how to do that in a little bit when we start actually demoing the program. We got to move it in Lightroom, or we can move it outside of the program, but then we got to tell Lightroom we did it. We got to go back in and say, hey, Lightroom catalog, there's some new locations that you need to know about, okay? That is by far the biggest problem people run into. Once something has been imported into Lightroom, don't touch it. And if you have to touch it, do it in the right way, okay? We'll talk about some more problems as we go today. Okay, so let's look at a couple other things this catalog does, because as of right now, it seems like a pretty pointless thing. It's this thing that makes you not be able to organize your own photos. Why would you want that? Why is that a good thing? Why is that an advantage? Okay, let's take a look. So our Lightroom catalog stores, first, we already know this, the locations of all of our photographs. Pretty simple, okay? And we know we're not going to break that link between images and catalog, or else you got some cleaning up work to do. A couple other things. The Lightroom catalog also stores small previews of the photographs themselves. And again, we'll look at how those are built when we start demoing the software in a little bit. But this is why, when you have missing images, when you have those question marks, those exclamation points in Lightroom, you can still see the pictures, which is very unnerving to some people. You'd think that if the photos were actually missing, they'd be gray, or they'd be gone, or missing, or something like that. But Lightroom has these little mini versions of each picture, and you can still see those even if the photos are missing, even if the photo and catalog link has been broken, because those little previews are stored in the catalog. They're part of that actual catalog file. Okay, that's another thing. Now the big one's the next one. Any changes you make to your pictures. So this means, and this is like the numero uno of awesome things Lightroom can do. The cool thing that this allows us to do, and I'll get into what exactly this means in a bit, but the amazing thing that the changes being stored in the catalog allows us to do is in Lightroom, there's no file open, there's no file close, there's no file save, there's no destructive editing. Back in the day when we opened Photoshop, you could destroy a picture in about 4 seconds, and you could permanently ruin that image forever without even meaning to. Lightroom, when you make a change to a picture, when you brighten the photo or darken the photo or whatever it happens to be, that change is not written down into the original picture living on your hard drive. That change is actually written down into the catalog. So what that means is when you're in Lightroom and you call up a new picture, you go to edit a new photograph, what it actually does is it goes to wherever that picture is stored, and it knows the location because that's part of Lightroom's catalog. It finds that picture, it pulls it up, and then it looks in the catalog and says, all right, well, here's the picture, we found the image. What changes have been made to this photograph? And it takes those changes, it applies them to the photo temporarily, and it shows you the final changed version in Lightroom. But as soon as you move on to the next picture, the changes go back to the catalog, and the original picture goes back to the hard drive. Which means, through all of this, if you were to look at the images living on your hard drive that Lightroom is working with and editing, they all look like originals. They all look like the photos right out of your camera. Because there's no way in all of Lightroom to permanently edit one of your files. It's all non-destructive. The changes are written in the catalog, not on the photos themselves. Moral of all that, you can edit with no reservations. You can do anything you want to your photographs in Lightroom. You can make them black and white, you can make them color, you can make them way bright or darker, it doesn't matter, because you can always get back to the original, which is huge. And that's why catalogs are worth it. That's why we worry about this and we use this, okay? Want to hammer it home again. The catalog does not store the pictures. It only stores a small version, the previews, it stores the locations, and it stores the changes, okay? Images and catalog are two separate pieces. The catalog does not contain one or the other. Let's look at this a little bit more, okay? Problem 2, and this relates exactly to that last point, okay? A lot of people, and this is a story, I always tell this story because a few years ago, this was one of the saddest times as a teacher that I've experienced. I went up to a student, and a student came up, I didn't go up to them, they came up to me, they were having some problems in Lightroom. And they said, Forrest, I really need your help, I don't know what's going on. I opened Lightroom today, and all my images were missing. Every one of them had a question mark in it. And I was like, oh, that's really strange. What did you do? Is your hard drive plugged in? Is everything connected? They're like, yeah. I was like, have you deleted anything recently? They were like, yeah, last night I found all these images that were also in Lightroom, and they were just sitting on my hard drive, so I deleted them off the computer. Okay, yeah, you deleted them off your computer, but those were the images in Lightroom, okay? So just because they're in Lightroom does not mean that anything is in Lightroom other than the previews and the locations. The pictures live somewhere physically on your hard drive, wherever that happens to be. So don't delete things that you see in Lightroom 2 unless you're sure that that's not actually the ones that are in Lightroom. There's ways to check, and we can take a look at that. All right, that's a big problem too. Don't let that happen to you. No reorganizing, no deleting things. Keep us in the straight and narrow. All right, so let's talk a little bit about, we've got these three pieces. We've got the images, we've got the catalog, and we've got the program. Where do we put it all? And this comes down completely to personal preference. What I'm going to do, though, is give you all what I require, or RMSP requires our career training students to do, and I think is kind of the industry standard these days for where images are stored. Okay? Again, there's lots of ways to do it, and there's many variations of this, but I think this works for most people. Okay? Here's the deal. If you're using multiple computers, if you have a desktop and a laptop, or two laptops or two desktops, whatever it happens to be, I like to take the catalog and the photos and store them on an external hard drive, something like this. This is like an ancient external, but you get the idea, some sort of external hard drive. Now here's the reason why. If I store catalog and photos on the external drive, the three things we need to run Lightroom are catalogs, photos, and the program. That means I can plug this hard drive with catalogs and photo into any computer with Lightroom's program installed on it, and I can work with Lightroom just like I do on my computer right up here at the front of the room, which is really nice. If you've got two computers and you've got Lightroom installed on both of them, if you've got one external with a catalog and a set of pictures, you can work on either computer you want without skipping a beat. It's a really nice way to do it. Okay? So that's why I recommend that. I think storing both of those things on the external can make a lot of sense. Okay? One computer, you could store things internally if you wanted to. But again, even if you have one computer, I still like to get everything off the internal. It doesn't keep up space on your internal hard drive. And the cool thing is, you can always download another version of the software, of the application. You can always go on Adobe's website. If your computer dies, adobe.com, buy a boxed copy at B&H, whatever it happens to be, download or buy another copy of the program. You still got your catalog and your photos. This is very easy to back up. You buy another one of these external hard drives, you copy the contents of one over to the other one, and then if you drop this or this crashes or something like that happens, you've backed up everything important on one little place. Makes it really nice and convenient. Okay? Now, if you don't have a lot of images and you just have one computer, you want to keep it simple, you can definitely store things internally. Definitely store, and I know a lot of students who do that. They've got their catalog, their pictures, and their application, program, all on their internal. It works, just make sure you're backing up your internal hard drive. Internal hard drives will crash, will die just as much, if not more often than external hard drives will. So either way you can do it, makes it clean. So here's a little visual. This is what I like to do. Internal hard drive, keep just the program. External, we got the catalog and the photographs. Real simple setup. All right, common problem number 3, okay? Importing images to the wrong location. Let's play along. Let's say that we are going to store everything, or not everything, we're going to store the photos and the catalog on the external hard drive. That means that every time we import additional photographs, every time we import new photographs, we need to make sure that when those, and when I say import, I mean copy images from memory card to somewhere, and as they're being copied, bring them into Lightroom, import them into the program. When we're importing, we need to be sure that the destination, and we're going to look at importing here in a little bit, that the destination is set to send the pictures to the external hard drive. And the problem with this is, Lightroom always defaults to sending things to the internal hard drive. So you got to make sure every time you're importing, every time you're bringing photos into the computer, you're checking where they're going, and you're making sure that the images are going to the external hard drive, not the internal. And again, we'll take a look at that in a little bit here. All right. So let's go through some summary steps on how we can use Lightroom efficiently and be sure that we're going to avoid some problems. And these are the steps that we're going to now demo after I go through them. We'll actually look at this stuff and make sure we get set up correctly. So first thing I would say, and this is the biggest thing, if you've used Lightroom in the past and you've made messes and you've got exclamation points and question marks, I see lots of smiles in the room because I know how it goes. I have been there, believe me. You got question marks, exclamation points, missing files. Start a new catalog and put that catalog on your external hard drive. And be sure it's named something different than Lightroom 6 catalog or whatever Adobe starts to name things. Make a new fresh one. That way we don't inherit any of our old messes. I think that's a good way to start things off, okay? And we're gonna do this in a minute. I'll show you all how easy it is. The second thing is import images in a way that keeps them organized. Right from the get-go, right from that initial time you click the import button, you wanna make sure things are organized in a way you want them to be. And again, we'll take a look at how we import as well. All right, once you've imported things, take the time to reorganize the folders within Lightroom to prevent losing your images. Now, here's the deal. You could just as easily rename your folders and move your folders outside of Lightroom. The problem being is that Lightroom would lose all of your pictures. So if you want to do folder reorganization, by default, Lightroom likes to import things by date, by the date the images were taken. I like that a lot, but if you don't like that and you want to reorganize things, do it within Lightroom, okay? Make sure we don't get things lost. Step 4. Use things like keywords and collections, which are two things that we're going to talk about later today, to further organize your images. So if folders aren't enough for you, you can add additional information like keywords and collections to the photographs that will help you further find the images that you're interested in. Okay? Big one. Once things are imported, once things are organized, leave the external hard drive alone. It should contain, in a perfect world, a catalog and a set of photos. And you shouldn't ever really need to go in there and move anything around. It should just be pretty self-sufficient. It should be able to work along happily ever after, okay? And then step 6, really important one, back up any changes. So whenever you import additional photographs, whenever you make a change and edit a bunch of photographs, back things up. The cool thing here is, if you're storing your photos and your catalog on the external, to back everything up, you just need to copy the contents of this to another one, and everything is safe, except for the program, but you can always download that off the web. Very simple process, okay? If you follow those 6 things, and you keep along with it, and you try to stay up with it, this should avoid all of those problems we've talked about, okay? With that said, we got one more problem, okay? And this one comes in where, if we think back to like the first or second slide, when you launch Lightroom, when you start the application or the program, it opens a catalog into itself. Well, I just told you on the last slide, the very first step is make a new catalog. Well, here's the problem. That means you've got your old, potentially, have your old messy catalog, and you've got your new blank, nice, perfectly post-event space course clean catalog. Which one's Lightroom going to open? When you click that little shortcut and you tell Lightroom to open a catalog, which one's it going to do? And we got to look at that as well. Another common problem is people get in the wrong catalog. For example, one day they made this beautiful new catalog. Things are organized. They all look great. They've been doing a great job working with Lightroom. One day they start up Lightroom and it opens the other catalog. They import pictures into the wrong catalog. Then you've got some pictures in one, other pictures in another. It makes a mess, okay? So be sure you're in the right one. How do we do that? We'll look at it in a minute here. Okay, so those are our 4 common problems. That's our little bit of an introduction into Lightroom. I want to show us some of this stuff now and actually take a look and start demoing the software. Okay, so bear with me here. Let me close out of this guy and let's start taking a look. So right now, what I've got is I want to show you how Lightroom by default works, how Lightroom works with things by default. So I've got a shortcut here for Lightroom down in my dock. That's what most of us have on our desktop or our dock if you have Lightroom running. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And Lightroom's going to launch. And we'll see I have a blank catalog here. I haven't actually used this version of Lightroom yet. I've just installed it. I'm brand new here. But notice, nowhere here did Lightroom ask me, which catalog would you like to open? What would you like to do? It just launched. It started, it did its thing. If you haven't been following along with what Lightroom's doing and you haven't been using Lightroom for a long time, I want to show you what just happened. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close Lightroom, because by default, when you start Lightroom, when you click that little button on your dock and you launch the program, what it actually does is in your Pictures folder on your computer, it builds you a little folder called Lightroom. And I imagine anyone in here who has used Lightroom for any given amount of time has a folder in their Pictures folder, or My Photos on a PC, called Lightroom. And in there are a couple things. Well, I want to show you these. So this little one right here is called Lightroom catalog.lrcat. Whenever you see something that ends in .lrcat, that stands for Lightroom catalog. This file right here is my actual catalog file itself. That's the thing that's got the changes and the locations and that kind of thing. This guy, the Lightroom catalog previews, that is the preview files. Those are the little mini versions of my pictures, the things that make things really confusing because you start up Lightroom and it says everything's missing, but you can still see the picture. That's due to that little file right there. That's storing small versions of your photos. So together, these two things make your catalog combined, okay? And you didn't have to tell Lightroom to build this thing. You didn't have to work with it at all. It just does it for you. It does it automatically, okay? Now, here's where we start getting into it a little bit. Personally, I never, ever, ever use this button. I never start Lightroom with the button on the dock, because that down on the dock, that's a shortcut to the program. That's saying, Lightroom, program, open, start, do your thing. When I click that button, I'm entrusting fate to decide which catalog it decides to open on any given day, okay? So, theoretical example here. I store my catalog here, the catalog that I like, the catalog that I'm using, the catalog that I want to continue to use. One day, I click that button down on my dock or on my desktop, and I don't have this plugged in. What's it gonna do? Well, it's actually going to launch the default catalog, the catalog I just showed you all. And if you start using that one, then we've automatically broken step 4, which is, or problem number 4, which is don't have more than one catalog. Make sure you're in the correct catalog when you're using the program. So I hate this little shortcut. In fact, right now, I'm actually going to take it and I'm going to remove it from my dock. And I recommend you all do that too, because it's a good first step. So how do we launch Lightroom in this case? Let me show you. I'm going to go back to the catalog itself in the Pictures folder, and here I've got the catalog. In Microsoft Word, there are two ways to open a document. You can open Word first, and then go File, Open, and find the document you're looking for. That's one way to do it. The other way is, you just double-click the document. And if you double-click the document you're interested in, it opens it right into the program. If I double-click the catalog that I'm interested in, it opens it right up into the program, okay? That is the correct way to launch Lightroom, because now I know with 100% certainty that I am in the catalog that I just double-clicked on, okay? Whether that's the one in the Pictures folder, the default catalog, or whether that's the one that I build on my external hard drive. I'm sure of the one that I'm inside of, okay? I'm sure I'm working with the right thing. Now, step 1 in our steps to success is to make a new catalog. And this is what I recommend you all do if you're inheriting some sort of mess. The way we do this is very simple. I'm in Lightroom right now. I'm in a catalog I don't really want to use. So what I'm going to do first here is plug in my hard drive, because I want to put this new catalog on my external. And I'm in a catalog that I don't want to use anymore. So I'm going to go File, New Catalog. All right, and it's going to say, hey, what do you want to call it, and where do you want to put it? Well, here's the deal. You'll notice that by default, Lightroom names the catalog Lightroom Catalog. If you work with Lightroom for any number of years, I can promise you, eventually you will have 5 or 6 catalogs all called Lightroom Catalog, or Lightroom Catalog-2, or Lightroom Catalog-3-2-2. It's crazy. We want to name this something unique. So I'm going to call this Forest's Lightroom Catalog. And I would recommend that when you're doing this at home, call it Your Name Lightroom Catalog, or call it My Lightroom Catalog. Something that makes it different from the default, something that makes it different from what you're used to. I'll give it a name here, and I'm also going to say go on to the main photo drive. So I'm going to set the destination as the drive I have plugged in. And I've just called my drive main photo drive. You could name yours whatever you want to call it, okay? Hit create here. Now what it's going to do, Lightroom just closed. It opened the new catalog that I've now created, and now I'm inside of the new catalog, and we can tell because at the top here, it now says Forest's Lightroom Catalog. We know we're in the new one, the good one, okay? Now, let me show you what it just did. Let's take a step back here. Let me close Lightroom. Okay. First off, I'm going to go to my Pictures folder, and I'm going to show you that that original Lightroom catalog is still there. right? We haven't done anything to that one. We just said, Lightroom, make me a new one, make me a second one. Nothing's changed there. What has changed, though, is now on my main photo drive, I now have a folder called Forest's Lightroom Catalog, and in there is a brand new catalog file and a set of previews, waiting for me to work with, waiting for me to import to, and do all my stuff with, okay? Now, how do we launch Lightroom? Every single time when we want to start the program, we don't use the shortcut down on the dock or the desktop. You've deleted that. That's gone. You don't want to use that anymore. We plug in our hard drive, go to the main photo drive, go to the Lightroom catalog folder, and then actually double-click that file itself. It's long. It's a few clicks. It's a lot of big process. It kills me every day when I have to take the extra 6 seconds to start Lightroom that way versus just clicking the button on the desktop. But it saves you hours down the road, being sure you're in the right catalog every time. Okay, so we're in here. We got this set. We have a brand new catalog ready to go. It's on the external. Big warning. In order to use Lightroom now, I've got to have my external hard drive plugged in. That means if I'm going on a trip and I want to bring my computer and shoot new pictures, I got to bring the external too. They're hand in hand. They go together. And if you look in my bag right now, I've got like 3 or 4 external hard drives with me because I brought all my pictures with it. It just becomes part of what you do. The big advantage here is as I shoot pictures on that trip, I'm not filling up my computer. Things are simple, they're in a good spot, they're off the internal hard drive. It's very organized and very clean, okay? So I've got this new catalog. Now that we're in here, I want to quickly do mention a couple preferences that I think are important for people when they're just making a new catalog. Now, preferences are about the most boring thing in the entire world to talk about. And I'm not going to spend 3 hours going through every preference and talking about the ins and outs. I want to talk about just two preferences that are really important to hit whenever you make a new catalog. Because here's the deal. Preferences are catalog specific. So if you set the preferences in one catalog and you make a new catalog, we've also got to set them in the new one. Okay? Very simple. I'm going to go up to Lightroom Preferences. If you're on a Windows machine and you're taking notes or you're looking at this, you're going to go up to Edit Preferences. All right? I'm going to go to Lightroom Preferences. There's only one preference in here that I want to change, and that is in the Presets tab, the second tab in. I want to turn on this thing that says Store Presets with Catalog. And what that's going to do is, presets in Lightroom are ways to save you time. For example, if you commonly find yourself editing a picture and you like to put a vignette, say you like to darken the corners of an image, and you like to vignette a certain way, darken those corners in a certain way every single time, you notice yourself doing this to photo after photo after photo, you could make a preset for that vignette where you just click one little button, and instead of dragging a bunch of sliders, it drags all those sliders for you, and you just are left with a nice vignette. By default, when you make that preset, it's stored on your internal hard drive. Regardless of where your catalog is, it stores the presets on the internal. Big problem there. If you have 2 computers and the presets are by default stored on your internal, when you then unplug your hard drive and you go to work on your desktop or your laptop, you switch computers, you don't have any of your presets because they're stored locally versus with the catalog. So by checking this, we now say, whenever I make a new preset, store it on the hard drive with my main catalog. That way it backs up with the catalog, it's there with the catalog, keeps everything in one nice place for us. All right, so I'm going to make sure I turn that on. Now, one thing I'll show you that did. In Lightroom now, outside of Lightroom now, on the main photo drive, in the Lightroom catalog folder, we now have a folder called Lightroom Settings, and that wasn't there before. And in that are all my presets. You can see it put the export presets in there, it put my file name templates, all my Lightroom setting stuff is now stored on the external, which is where I want it to be. Keeps everything self-contained, pretty easy. Now, the second preference that's very important is one that I like to call the in case of emergency preset. It saves you from some problems down the line. Let me present the problem to you. Our changes, when we make a change to a photograph, are not stored on the pictures. We just talked about that, right? When we make a change to an image, brighter, darker, more contrast, less contrast. That change is written down into the catalog, not into the pictures themselves. That means that if your, little friend, kid, grandkid, little munchkin that happens to be running around your house, whoever it happens to be, comes on your computer one day and deletes your catalog, or let's say you just do it. You're like, what's this catalog thing doing? Let's get rid of that, and you delete the catalog. You've just ruined, deleted, thrown away all the changes you've ever made to your pictures, which isn't the end of the world. You still have the pictures, but you've lost all your changes. That's a little scary to me. I don't really like that whole changes are just written down one place and not the other places. So I want to show us one way to, you could call it back up your changes. Keep your changes safe somewhere else. This lives on a PC under Edit Catalog Settings. On a Mac, it lives under Lightroom Catalog Settings. So PC, you would go to Edit Catalog Settings. Go to Lightroom Catalog Settings. And in here, I'm going to go to the Metadata tab. All right. Now, metadata. We're not going to go too deep into it. Pretty simply, though, it is the stuff about your picture that's not the actual what color is each pixel, okay? Metadata example of that is every time you click the shutter, metadata is an example of the camera writing down what ISO you used, what shutter speed you used, what was your aperture, what did the flash go off, what's the serial number of your camera, all this other stuff that isn't really part about the photo. It doesn't really determine what color each pixel is. I'm going to turn on this checkbox right here that says automatically write changes into XMP. In simple terminology, well, in very simple terminology, this is the save you from deleting your catalog and losing all your changes button, okay? What it's doing is, now when you make a change in Lightroom, when you make something brighter or darker, it still writes the change down to the catalog. It still does the whole thing we've talked about. I'm not going back and saying everything's different from what I originally said. It still does all that. But it also, in the metadata of each photograph, when you make a change to that picture, it writes the change down in the metadata. Now, metadata is a far cry from the actual picture itself. When you make the image brighter, by turning this on, you aren't saying, Lightroom, I want you to actually physically alter the photo and make it brighter. You still have that great ability to undo things and go back to the original. This is just saying, hey, think of it this way. If you've got a print, instead of actually brightening the print, this is writing on a sticky note on the back of the print. It says, hey, this image should be a little bit brighter. This image should have a little bit more contrast, should be a little bit more saturated. That's what this is going to do. It's going to slap that sticky note on the back and let you know. That way, in the event of your catalog dying, getting deleted, you've got kind of a backup of your changes. And if you were to take those images that had been altered with that checkbox checked and import them into a new Lightroom catalog, because your old one just went up in smoke, all your changes would still be set. So it's just a nice little backup you can fall back on, okay? So I don't mean to bore us with preferences. I know that's not the most exciting thing in the world, but those are two that I would be sure to change every time. Yes?
Well, there are two questions.
Go for it.
Actually, three questions. Going back a bit. If my catalog is fine.
Yes.
But I have not named it Sue's catalog.
Okay.
So I don't want to go out and do that in my Mac.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that?
How do you change a name of a catalog?
Within Lightroom.
Within Lightroom. So you actually don't have to do it within Lightroom. And that's a great question for all you guys. So I'll go ahead and address this really quickly now. If you want to change the name of a catalog, okay, let me quit Lightroom here. First of all, make sure Lightroom is quit. Okay, you don't want to do it when Lightroom's running. That's going to cause some problems. I've got the two things here, the catalog and the previews. Okay, what you want to do is just change the name of the catalog to whatever you want it to be. Be sure to leave the .lrcat at the end, because that determines that it's a catalog. And then also rename the previews file the exact same thing while leaving the previews word on the end of it. So if I wanted to call this, say, let's say Forest Lightroom catalog instead of Forests, I could change the name of that and then also go into the previews file and change the name there as well. And as long as the two stay the same, you're set.
Just thought of something. Where in the back?
We'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to have to hold some questions. Let's do a couple more questions.
Question of what you just
Hmm?
if your presets.
Mm-hmm.
I know where my presets are, and I haven't
Okay.
I know them in the library,
Mhm.
in the developed presets.
Yes.
Should I bother to move them, or what do you suggest?
If you've been using them for a while, are you using more than one computer?
No.
Okay, then just leave them be where they're stored right now. They'll be fine. Yeah, for sure. In the back.
Can you drag the renamed catalog to your desktop so you can start it? With that?
Totally, yeah. You all, this is the great thing. Well, yes, if you bring everything along with it. You got to bring the previews there as well, and the settings. Everything's got to, these three things have got to travel as one. So if you move all three of them, for sure. It's just kind of a matter, you won't want to just move the catalog and not the previews or anything else. They got to move together. All right, last question.
Yeah, just a quickie, that checkbox for save the XMP
Yeah.
information, does that work retroactively for someone who's never done that?
It does not work retroactively. But once you check it, what you can do, and let me start up Lightroom so I can show you what this is. This is another great question. When you check that write changes into XMP box, that box that saves you from deleting your catalog, it doesn't affect changes you've made in the past, okay, which is a big problem because if you've been using Lightroom for quite a while, then you don't have those changes backed up. What you can do is actually select all of your photographs in Lightroom, and I believe it's up in metadata, and then save metadata to file. And if you do that little routine of going to metadata, save metadata to file, that will take all that information and write it down into the file for you. Yeah. All right. So you all, we'll have, I promise we'll have some more question time as we go for sure. I want to show you a couple more things here before we do any more of that. So we got our catalog set up. We got our preferences set. We're good. We got this great place. We know how to start Lightroom now. Awesome. Okay. The next thing I want to do is how we go about importing. Just some basic importing stuff, the things that I want to look at. Because here's the deal. I've taught a lot of Lightroom students in my life, and the number one thing people always have problems with is importing. It's like the biggest thing that people just can't wrap their brains around. So I want to go through it, and I want to give you my 4 steps to success, the 4 things that I think that I know I check every time I import. And if you check them every time you import, you won't cause a problem. You won't make anything big. Because remember, one of our common problems of the day is importing files to the wrong place, sending them to the wrong location. And I want to look at how we can avoid that. So what I've got is a memory card full of pictures. It's pretty simple. I'm going to take these, plug them into the computer here, and because I'm on a Mac, Photos will open by default. I'm going to close Photos out of the way. We don't want that. But you'll notice what Lightroom actually did was automatically opened up the import dialog box for me. Now, sometimes this won't happen, so I want to show you. If you plug in a card and you're still looking at plain old Lightroom, nothing happened, it's just like crickets going off in the background. In the lower left-hand corner of Lightroom, if you're in the library module, there should be a button that says import. And you can click on that, and that will prompt it to go to the import box. Sometimes you got to do that, sometimes you don't, depending on what it is. So here are the 4 steps to success. Step number 1 is we need to check the source. And the source is what it is you're trying to import. What do you want to bring into the computer? By default, if you're importing from a memory card, which 99% of the time you probably will be, it's going to default to the memory card as your source. And you can see right now, it says EOS Digital up there. That's because I shot these on a Canon camera. It calls it EOS Digital. Those are my images. So 99 out of 100 times, you don't have to set your source, right? It just does it for you. But step 1 is just make sure the source is correct. Be sure that it's importing the images you're wanting to import, okay? Because I'm not going to do it again, I want to just show you. If the source is incorrect, you can click up there in the upper left-hand corner, and you can set a different source if you want to. Like there's a button for other source. You can say import something else, not the memory card. But again, by default, you should be set. That's step 1. Second thing, how do you want to do it? How do you want the import to work? Okay. Again, if we're importing from a card, we always want to copy. All right. We could do copy as DNG. That's something for a more advanced talk. But I'm just going to stick with copy right now. That just means images are going to be copied from the card over to the wherever I tell them to go. In this case, the external hard drive. And as that copy happens, it's going to add them to the catalog. So Lightroom will then know about those pictures and be able to work with them. So source is step 1. Step 2 is how we're gonna do it, right? Do we want to copy, move, add? What are we looking at? All right. Third thing is, and this is the biggie, if you're gonna only check one of these things, this is the one to check. Where are the pictures going? And that is the third step, and it's in the upper right-hand corner. Notice, right now, it's set to go to the Pictures folder on my internal hard drive. Lightroom loves to send things to the internal hard drive. It's like its destiny in life. It just keeps doing it, even if you tell it not to. I need to change that because I want them to go to the external. So I'm going to click up there and go to Other Destination. I'm going to say, no, I don't want them in the Pictures folder. I don't want them on the desktop or Movies or anywhere like that. I want them to go somewhere else. And it's going to say where. Well, I want to go to the main photo drive, and then on my main photo drive, I'm going to make a new folder and call it Images. Something simple. You call it Photos. I have a lot of students call it Photos Go Here, if you want to, as like a little reminder that yes, you do in fact put your photos there. Call it Images, and we'll hit Choose here. All right, and now we can see we're going from the card, we're going to copy to main photo drive Images, which is a really good setup. That means as things get copied over, they're going to go to the right location. That's exactly what we want to happen. Number 4 is, given all this great stuff, given making sure the first 3 steps are under control, how do we want to organize the pictures? And that is set under the Destination section on this right-hand side. I like to have my folders, at least, organized by date, by the date that I shot the photographs. Many people will disagree, and that's totally a valid claim, but for now I'm going to leave it on date. And I'm going to show us some ways to break things up by category here in a minute. So those are my 4 things. What are we importing? How do we want to do it? Where are they going to go? And how do we want to organize them? Of those 4, if you just want to look at one, like I said, check the destination. Be sure that the where, the upper right-hand corner, is set to where you want the photos to go to. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and hit import here and let it cruise along. Yeah, while it's importing.
You're importing to an external hard drive.
That's what I just did. The main photo drive is an external hard drive. Yep, so that's what we're doing. All right. So we can see right now, upper left-hand corner, there's a little bar going across. It's copying things from card to external hard drive as I told it to do it. And as it's doing that, it's also adding them to the catalog. So Lightroom's catalog now has a little card in it that says this photo lives here, that photo lives there. All right. Now, while it's going, I just want to show you what actually happened. I'm going to go ahead and minimize Lightroom here. On my external hard drive now, I've got 2 folders. One we've seen inside. That's the catalog, all that good information. The other one is Images. And notice now, it organized everything by date for me. I pulled a bunch of old photos. That's why it's only through 2013, right? But inside of each of these, we have other folders for each day. And this is how I told Lightroom to organize this stuff. So these were just loose images off a memory card. And it looked at the date that each photo was taken, and it sorted them correspondingly into dated folders just like this. That's pretty nice. That's pretty useful in the world of what we're working with, okay? And we can see, this is the important part. We got to understand this. In Lightroom, I have a panel, let me close this up, a panel called Folders over here. And in my Folders panel, I can see the exact same dates that I see back, if I hide Lightroom, back on the hard drive. Okay, here's the thing we got to understand. These pictures here on the hard drive are the exact same pictures you're seeing over here in the Folders panel, which means I'm going to be very bad right now. I'm going to take the 2009 folder, and I'm going to do exactly what I told you all not to do. I'm going to move it somewhere different, say the desktop. When I go back to Lightroom, 2009 now has a big old question mark on it. It's like, I don't know where it is. You told me it was on the hard drive. I don't see it there anymore. That is not what you want to do. Those are the same pictures you're seeing in one place and the other. So let me fix it. To fix it, I'm just going to put it back where it expects to find it, back in the Images folder. And you can see now back in Lightroom, it's like, oh, no problem. You put it back. I know where things are again. Okay? So that's the big warning. That was another one of our big problems, is things getting unlinked. Okay? So let's break this down for our workflow a little bit. We made a new catalog. We set up our preferences, those 2 main preferences that needed work. and we imported some pictures, being sure that we did it correctly. The next thing I want to show you all is, now that we got pictures in the program, I want to work with folders a little bit in a way that's safe, in a way that makes sure Lightroom doesn't lose things. Because here's the deal, I have absolutely no idea what I shot on December 27th, 2010 right now. I'd have to click on that and take a look, like, oh, sweet, I was snowshoeing with one of my friends. I had no idea until I clicked on it. That 2010-10-12-27 is about the most useless file name I've ever seen. So let's make it a little bit more useful. What I want to do, and this is the very first thing I do once I've imported pictures, is I reorganize and rename my folders. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on that guy, and I'm going to go to Rename. Now, because I'm renaming it inside of Lightroom, I don't have to worry about anything getting lost or missing, because Lightroom's going to update as I do it. I'm going to go to Rename here, and I'm going to leave the date there, because here's the deal. I love the dated system. I love things staying chronological. It's very organized. It's the way my brain works. But it's kind of useless in the end of it all if you don't add something nice after it. So I'm going to leave the date there, and I'm just simply going to put, say, snowshoeing. Pretty simple. And we save that. All right, so I just typed in there, I saved it, and we can see, sure enough, now in the folders panel, we've got the word snowshoeing after that. So I know what I was doing on that day at that time. Now, here's the thing we got to understand. On the external hard drive now, if I go to the 2010 folder, it also renamed it here, okay? But if I had done it here and not in Lightroom, did the exact same thing, it would have lost that folder of images. So when you're renaming, you got to do it inside the program. Okay, now let's take this a step further. Let's take a look, let me scroll down a little bit here. Let's take a look here. So March 31st, 2013 was the first day of a trip I took to Death Valley with my family, all right? And we were there for a couple weeks. So I took photos, I took probably 200, 300 images every single day of that trip. Well, if it's all the same trip, I don't want a separate folder, because every folder would be like Death Valley trip day 1, Death Valley trip day 2. That's kind of annoying, it's kind of confusing, it doesn't work very well. So what I want to do is make one folder for Death Valley trip and put all of them inside of that. So what I would do is I would rename this first one. I'm just going to right click again, just like I just showed you all. Come on, computer. And go to rename. And I'm just going to say Death Valley trip. All right, now that first folder is renamed. Now what I'm going to do is go into the next one, and I'm going to move the picture from this folder into the top Death Valley folder just by clicking and dragging it. So say, are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. I'm going to do that with the 03 folder. I'm going to select all these images in here, move them into that Death Valley folder. It's going to say, are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. And lastly, this last one, select the pictures, move them into Death Valley, and we move them in there. Now we got one folder for the whole trip, and really I'd be moving 200 or 300 images per day, right? Little example here. We get them all moved in there. Now I got one folder to click on, and all my pictures are in there. And what makes this better, if I hide Lightroom out of the way, if we take a look on the actual hard drive, all that moving, there's all 12 pictures. These folders will all be completely empty. All the moving we do in Lightroom is duplicated on the drive. So if you're going to rename, if you're going to move, if you're going to do things like that, do it within the program. It's very simple to do, as you've just seen. Renaming things, moving things, very, very easy. Couple little warnings, okay? Couple little warnings. The first is this. When you're going to move something in Lightroom, and you're going to click and drag it, you need to click the picture itself and not the frame around it. So for example, if I want to move these 3 photos to a different folder, say, I don't know why I'd want to do this, but let's say I wanted to move them to September 2nd of 2012. If I try to click and drag the frame, it's not going to work. I could do it all day. If I instead select the same 3 and I click the photo itself, now they'll move over. So just a little thing that's a big one that trips people up. Yes?
What do you do after you empty the folder? Do you delete the folder?
I'm going to get to that right now. Thank you. Perfect lead-in.
One other question.
Yeah, go for it.
Why, you could name your files and your folders by import.
Yes, totally.
So why did you do that?
Because I could name my files on import, but I don't rename any of my files because I think the camera's name, it works for me. It's a simple number, they're all unique. Folders, though, when you're importing, you need to be careful because I like the dated structure, and there's no way to get the nice dated organization in an automatic way. Lightroom can't do that automatically and put the little custom names at the end of it for you.
I do that. I have the date,
Mm-hmm.
the date, the subject,
Yeah.
and the place.
And you do it on import
On import.
into the right folder that's named that way, or the photos? Okay, there's no way to do it for a lot of photos at once though. Like if you shot images of multiple days, there's no way to get them all automatically with the name of what you shot and the folder names.
I do it small. I do it by day.
You have to do it by day, exactly. And I like to import, if I go on a trip, I might import when I get home, and I like to do it all at once. So there's the difference there. Yeah. So now we have these empty folders that have zeros next to them. It's just simply a matter of right-clicking on each one of them, and let me actually make that a little clearer. Right-click on each one and going to remove. And that will pull them out. Right-click, remove, and right-click, remove. And that pulls them off, and now we're only left with those folders that we've worked with. Okay, so first thing I do, once I've imported pictures, and the first thing I recommend you all do if you're using Lightroom once you import, do your folder reorganization. Yes?
When you remove them,
Mm-hmm.
remove them from the catalog or from the hard drive, or both?
Both. Yep, nothing in there now. It does both for you. And it didn't used to. That's actually a nice change they've done. It used to just do the catalog, but they stayed on the hard drive. You had all these ghost folders floating around, so that's kind of nice. All right, last.
If you have your catalog on your computer
Mhm.
and your pictures, your images
Yeah.
on the external drive,
Mhm.
you move the catalog
Mm-hmm.
from the computer
To the external.
without having it to refine the picture.
It shouldn't need to. As long as you know, here's the deal. Let's think about our flowchart. That's a great question. Can we move the catalog without updating Lightroom or telling it that we moved it? The program opens the catalog. The catalog references the photos. So as long as you don't move the pictures, as long as you can tell the program where the catalog is by navigating to it and double-clicking on it, you can move it wherever you want.
Part B
Mhm.
to that, if you have multiple computers,
Uh-huh.
and this may be beyond where you want to go.
Yeah.
Can you take the catalog and put it in Dropbox so that it shows up on all your machines?
Catalogs can't be network stored very easily. Because of just network transfer speeds and things like that, Lightroom won't actually allow you to store it on a lot of network drives. It will say it's unable to do that. Dropbox, you could try it, but I don't think you'd have very good results. So I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah. All right, last one.
Questions?
Yeah. Yeah, go for it.
First of all, you create a new catalog.
Yeah, for sure.
On an outside drive.
Mm-hmm.
You go ahead, you set it up and so forth. You drag from the previous catalog the photos.
You can. I'm going to save that question for when we're done. Remind me, though, when we're done and we do some Q&A, that's a little bit more of an involved process.
Now the question that would be before that.
Yeah.
I believe my Lightroom program is on my hard drive.
Okay.
I send my photos over,
Mhm.
corrections over to my external drive.
Yeah.
Can I drag the Lightroom program over to the external drive?
You want the Lightroom program to stay on the internal. The program should be on the internal, just the catalog and the photos on the external.
If I go to another computer.
Re-download the program off of Adobe's website. That's the best way to do it.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, for sure. All right, so you all, we get our folders organized, we get everything imported. The next thing that I want to talk about and show you all a little bit about is once we got our folders done, we might want to start organizing things by category or by some sort of thing that's not just what picture it is. For example, you might want a way to quickly and easily see all of your favorite images, your portfolio of images with just one button. Because most of us, at least for me, I didn't shoot all my favorite images on one day of my entire life. I've shot them over time. So they won't all be in one folder. All right, another example is if you're a big waterfall shooter, you shoot a lot of waterfalls and flowing water and things like that, you're not going to shoot all that on one day. You might want one button you can click on that will show you all of your waterfall pictures with one click, okay, versus having to go to each folder with those images in it. And this is something that we can talk about a little bit called collections. And collections are a great way to group photos by some common theme, some common, I don't know, attribute, you could say, about the picture, and we can group them up that way. Now, first thing we got to understand, collections and folders are two very different things. We can't get the two of them confused. A folder in Lightroom, and we've got the folders panel over here to prove it, a folder in Lightroom is physically where the pictures reside. It's where the pictures actually live on your external or internal or wherever you've imported them to, where they live on the hard drive. A collection is kind of imaginary. It only exists in Lightroom. It's not an actual place pictures live. It's kind of like a saved grouping. It's a button. You click the button, and it goes and finds the corresponding images wherever they may live and displays them to you. And they're great little tools. So let's look at this. What I'm going to do is click on all photos up here under the catalog panel so I can see everything. And I'm going to make a folder for a couple different sports. I've got some easy sports in here. Let me scroll down here a little bit. I have a collections panel right underneath my folders panel. And at the top, there's a plus sign. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click that plus sign and go to Create Collection. Fairly straightforward. And it asks me to give it a name. Well, let's call this basketball. And I'm going to uncheck all these checkboxes. We don't really have time to cover what they do. They're not going to really influence your life in that great of a way as far as Lightroom's concerned. So we'll uncheck all those, call this thing basketball, and hit Create. And now we can see on the left-hand side, I've got a new little grouping called basketball, okay? And it's got a 0 next to it because I haven't done anything with it yet. There's no pictures in it. But here's the deal. These basketball pictures you can see here, all right, and I think they're all down below. They were shot on many, I think there's more, no, there's more, not more down there. They were shot on many different days, many different basketball games worth of images here from a couple years actually. So there's no one folder I could go to in the folders panel to see all my basketball pictures. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the basketball pictures I can see here. And I think it's about that chunk right there. And now that I have them, oh, there's one right there too. Now that I have them selected, I'm actually just going to click, drag, and drop them onto the basketball collection. And now that little collection's got a 22 next to it. I just added 22 pictures to that. First and foremost, we did not just duplicate all of our pictures, okay? Those 22 images are still sitting on your hard drive as just 22 pictures. By adding them to a collection, we didn't duplicate them, we didn't move them anywhere. They still live in their folders on the hard drive. But we now have a button we can click. And when I click that button, Lightroom looks through all the folders and it grabs all the basketball pictures that we have put into that collection and it displays them to us. And you can see now, with one click, there are the basketball pictures. That's all there is to it. So for the common things you shoot, if you're a wildlife photographer, make a collection for each of the animals that you're commonly shooting out there, pictures of. If you're a street photographer, maybe make different collections for different types of street photography. You've got your people, your detail shots, things like that. Whatever it happens to be, think about how you can start to break things up, okay? I'm gonna do one more here. Let me make a collection this time, and I'm gonna call this one, say, football. If I can spell that right. Hit create, and again, I get another 0. I can come in here and select my football images. By the way, to select more than one picture, I'm just holding down the Command key on a Mac or Control on a PC. And that lets me select quite a few images if I want to. So I've got those selected. Again, once I have them selected, click, drag, and drop. And I add them into that collection. And now I've got a button for football. I can click on that and I can see those pictures. One thing we need to understand, this picture right here, right now I'm looking at it in the collection, is the very same picture as the one that you would find in its folder. If you went to the folders panel and you found what day that was shot on and you went to the folder, they're the same picture. Which means if I edit this photograph, right from here, I go to the develop module, do my editing, make it black and white, make it pretty, whatever I'm going to do. It's also edited in the folder, and it's also edited in any other collection that photo happens to be a part of. Okay, it's the same picture. It just belongs to different groupings. It's in different places all at once, and that's something we really need to understand. Okay, so we can build collections. Great way to look at things in a nice way. One thing real quick though, But I need to mention, if you shoot a lot of things, this collections list is going to get really long, like 100, 200 entries long, because if you make a category for almost everything you shoot, a lot of people shoot a lot of things. That's a pretty ineffective way to look at stuff. You got to scroll down, you got to, search, it alphabetizes so all your sports aren't together, they're all mixed up alphabetically. It's a mess. So the other thing I want to show real quickly in the world of collections is a way to sort these things. Okay, so very simple. Break it down real quick before we do that. To build a collection, all we're doing is clicking on the plus sign at the top of collections, and we're going to create collection. And that's all there is to it. We click on that, we give it a name, you hit save or create, and you drag photos into it. It's that simple, okay? If you want to order, sort, organize your collections, for example, if you've got 20 different sports you shoot, and you want all your sports to be grouped into one thing called sports, we can do that too. And that is what's called a collection set. And that's right there. So the two things we're going to talk about today are the collections, the simple collections, and then a collection set. And this is very simple, very easy. I'm going to go to create collection set here. And it's going to ask me what I want to call it. Well, I'm going to put basketball and football inside of it, and those are both sports. So let's call it sports. And I'll hit create. This is just like, think of this as a folder for your collections. It's a folder to put your collections inside of. I can take basketball now, I can drag it up and drop it on top of sports. I can take football, drop it on top of sports, and now I have a nice little container that I can expand and contract that has my different sports collections in it. Makes it really nice to organize things, okay? So, we import our pictures, we do our folder organization, and I showed us how to move things from folder to folder, how to rename folders. Collections, great way to organize things by category, okay? And it's that simple. You hit plus sign, create a collection, drag things into it, pretty straightforward. The last thing of our organizational tools that I want to talk about are what are called keywords. And keywords a lot of people use, they're a very common one. A keyword is a way we can mark a photograph by what's in it. It's kind of a nice way to, not necessarily to categorize things, but to tag things that are in your picture. Now, there's a grand finale today, okay? I've been working, I got fireworks and confetti is gonna fall down, it's gonna be great. There's a grand finale today, and the grand finale is I wanna show you all that everything we do in Lightroom, organizationally, is searchable, meaning I could just type some words into my keyboard and it would pop up what I'm looking for. So everything we're doing is searchable, and this pertains really a lot to keywords. So let's think about this. Let's start with collections. Let me go to the football collection here. If I typed in to Lightroom, let's say Lightroom had a magic like a Google search bar. If I typed into Lightroom the word football, I would want those images to pop up. They're all of football. That's pretty straightforward, okay? Here's a contrary example to that. Let's talk a little bit about keywording, okay? Let's talk a little bit about keywording. If let's find a suitable photo for this. Oh, here's some photos of New York. Perfect, this photo. All right, if I typed into my search box, windows or crane, notice there's a crane in the upper part of this photograph right here. Let's say I typed into my search box the word crane. Would I want this photo to pop up? Probably not. It's not of a crane. There is a crane in the picture, but that's not the main thing. With keywords, the biggest thing I can say, you gotta think about what it is you would want to pop up if you typed that in the search box. For example, on this photograph, if I typed in sailboat in the search box, I'd want this photo to pop up. If I typed in New York, I'd want this photo to pop up. Skyline, I'd also want this photo to pop up. Trees, if I type trees in, probably not. Yes, there are trees in the picture, but it's not a major thing. It's not the main theme. And that's what you gotta think a little bit about, okay? So let's look at how we would do this. Here are a few photos of my friend Andy Snowshoeing. We already talked about these. Let's say that I wanted to keyword these images here, this little set of photos, okay? Some main things that come to mind. He's snowshoeing, so we would definitely want to put that keyword into the photographs. We'd probably want to put his name, And we may want to put where he is, like, Rattlesnake Wilderness area in Missoula, Montana, something like that. We're not going to put stump, moss, trees, because those aren't what we're going to search for. So let's do that. Let me select these photos of Andy here, and in my keywording panel over on the right-hand side, whenever we want to keyword something, we start by selecting what it is we want to keyword. I got those images selected. Now in the keyword box, I'm going to click right here in this big gray open box here in order to type. And I'm going to type snowshoeing. Now I need another keyword. So to separate your keywords, you're going to put a comma and a space. So one keyword, comma, space. Next keyword, I'm going to put Andy, comma, space, and I'm going to put rattlesnake, which to me means the Rattlesnake Wilderness area, a nice hiking area around Missoula. If you're ever in Missoula, go to the Rattlesnake Wilderness area. It's a great place. Right, we get it. There's no rattlesnakes, I promise. It's just the name. So we call it rattlesnake here. And then once I'm done keywording, I hit the Enter key on the keyboard, and that tags all of those images with that those corresponding keywords. Couple things. I got to give you the warnings because the whole theme of this is how to avoid making problems in Lightroom. When you're keywording, you got to decide, are you always going to capitalize the first letter of your keywords, or are you never going to capitalize the first letter of your keywords? Don't do a mix of both, right? Decide, be consistent. Are you always going to do the plural of words? Or are you going to do the singular of words? Those are two different keywords to Lightroom. So you got to think about these things. I always capitalize my first letter of my words. Keeps it simple, okay? Let's do a couple more here. Let's do this photo of the bridge in New York. Actually, let's do all 4 of these New York shots. So I'm going to select all of them, click in my keywording box, New York. That's not how you spell it. Apologies. New York, comma, space. I might do, say, city, comma, space, because it's actually New York City, but we could do city as a separate word. Yes?
New York can be 2 separate words in there?
You can, yes. You can do spaces. If I put a comma, then it's a separate keyword. Yep. So you want to be sure that you can definitely do spaces. Multi-words are okay. It's a great question. New York City, I might leave it at that. Hit the Enter key. Now, a couple of these are of bridges. So I might deselect this one right here that's just not a bridge. And I might click back in the box, and you notice it leaves my 2 keywords there. So I could do comma, space, bridge. Enter that in. 2 more of these are night photos. So I might deselect the one that's not nighttime and click back in there and do night. So you can see we can do some different combinations. Essentially, the moral of this is, whatever you have selected, when you click and you type in the keywording box, that's what's going to get the keywords. All right? Yeah, go for it. It's syncing for me as it's going. Yep, because we got that checkbox checked for the synced settings. Yes?
What about using the keyword list for new photos?
Yeah, you can definitely do that. I'm not one much for keyword lists because I think they, a lot of times I will apply extra keywords to photos, even if just because they're there right in front of me in the list. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess there's a tree in there and there's a button for it, so it makes it easy. I like to kind of keyword just from thin air because I think that keeps it much more to just what's in the photo, just the main themes. But you could definitely do that.
But don't you get a huge number of keywords that way?
You can get, yeah, you do get a huge number of keywords that way, but again, this is searchable information. So I want a huge number of keywords. That's kind of where we want to go. That way, the more different things I type into the search box, the more variety of things will pop up for me. Yep, I don't want to limit myself. In the world of keywords, my rule generally is about 3 to 5 per photograph. Somewhere in there, I think, is a really great amount of keywords for one single image. If you're adding 10 or 20, you're probably doing the thing where you're adding the keyword crane to this photo, even though it's like a tiny little thing up there. Okay, you want to stick to the main subjects. So we can keyword things very quickly and easily. Go ahead and go in there and do that. So collections, good way to get a button, a nice categorical breakup of your photographs. Keywords, much more precise, much more image-to-image specific. So let's bring this all back around a little bit, okay? If you follow this workflow, if we go through these steps, we make collections, we do keywords, we organize our folders, and we make a new catalog and get everything set up, you will be off to a great start in Lightroom, a start that you can keep going with, and you shouldn't if you follow those 4 problems, and we try to avoid those 4 problems, you shouldn't run into any issues down the line. Now, I want to show you all why we put the time into this, why this is amazing, why we care about organization and care about keeping things orderly. What I'm going to do, and this is the finale, you could say, of what we've been doing here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to all of my pictures. So right now in the catalog panel, I'm clicking on all photographs. At home, that's like 40,000. Here, I've only told it about 127, so this is going to be much less impressive. But we go to all photographs, and you can see, I can see a whole variety of things. There's senior photos, there's sports, there's everything all mixed in. And let's say theoretically through the years, I have put all of my good names on all of my folders. I've been right-clicking, renaming, adding those descriptive words. Everything's organized, we're in a good space. If I want to find a photo, what I can do is in my all photos area, I can go up to this thing called the library filter at the top of the panel. Now, sometimes the library filter will go away. If it disappears on you, the backslash key on the keyboard is the one. So backslash is the slash that goes this way, for all you in the audience, this way. You can notice I'm going to push it right now. It hides itself. It's the most annoying keyboard shortcut in the whole world, okay? I don't know why you would ever want to hide that thing, but you make sure it's there. You hit backslash, be sure you have it. And I'm going to go to text. And in text, I get a little typing box. And I can type in anything I want. For example, let's type in the word bridge. Oh look, my 3 bridge images pop up right before my eyes. Let's delete that. Let's type in Andy. Oh look, there are those photos of Andy Vale snowshoeing. Let's delete that out. So we've just searched for a couple keywords that we've done. Not the coolest thing in the world. Let's type football. Oh look, there are the football images. It just searched for the collection, and it found those pictures that were in that certain collection. All right, let's delete that out. Let's type Death Valley. There are my Death Valley photos, just like that. So you can search folders, you can search collections, you can search keywords. All of that stuff is totally searchable information. And that's why Lightroom is so powerful. We can add this information to our photographs and very easily find what it is we're looking for, okay? So take the time, work with this stuff, and really make sure you're putting the time into organizing your pictures, okay? Now, really quickly, okay, I want to run over our 4 problems, okay? I want to sum this all back up and say, all right, let's take a deep breath. We got Lightroom set up. We got things organized. I've showed you a lot of information today, a lot of different things we can do. What are those 4 things that we're going to avoid doing to protect ourselves? So, common problem 1. We all know what this one is. Well, I've told you. Whether you know what number 1 is, who knows? Avoid moving your pictures without telling Lightroom you did it. Okay, that's as simple as you've got this folder on your main photo drive called Images. Just don't move anything in there. Don't touch it, don't move it, don't mess with it. Let it sit on your external hard drive all the time. That's all you got to worry about. Okay, if you do need to move something in here, do it from within Lightroom. Rename, move, do whatever you need to do inside the program, and you're fine. Or if you happen to forget and you move something around, just move it back and you'll fix the problem, right? Remember I moved 2009 out and tears were shed, but we fixed it. We made it really quick and easy. That's problem 1. Problem 2, just because in Lightroom we can see these pictures does not mean they are part of this catalog. The images are not in here, okay? The pictures themselves are not stored in the catalog. The pictures are right here. So don't delete those pictures because they're in Lightroom. Remember, in Lightroom is a loose term. It simply means the catalog knows about the pictures that live somewhere else on your computer, okay? That's problem number 2. Yes, it's pointers. They're pointers to your photographs. Number 3, importing images to the wrong location. I've told you this. Lightroom loves to store your images on the internal hard drive. And when you're importing, and I can go in there right now and hit the import button, this little destination over here, remember that's the 3rd thing we're going to check every time we're bringing photos into the computer. That destination loves to default back to the pictures folder. That's not what you want it to be. If you're trying to put your pictures on the external, be sure that they're going to the external. So 3rd thing, import in the wrong location, be sure your destination is set correctly, right? Be sure we're sending things over to that main photo drive or wherever you want your pictures to go, all right? And then the fourth one, this one is also very easily avoidable, opening the wrong catalog. And you all, when you're out there and you're working, the biggest way to not mess this one up is honestly just get rid of that Lightroom icon off your desktop or off your dock. Just kill it. And then you don't have an easy way to launch Lightroom. If Lightroom's quit, you don't see it down there, and yes, I would like to quit. You don't see it down there, you gotta go to the hard drive. You have to go to the Your Name catalog folder and then the catalog and double click on that. And that way you always know you're getting in the right place. If you wanna open your old catalog, remember, by default, our Lightroom catalog is stored in our pictures folder. That's the original catalog you got when you first started using the program, okay? So I would say, in conclusion of what I wanted to officially talk about, be sure we're avoiding those 4 issues. And if you can do that, you can use Lightroom pretty much event, bad thing, tier, whatever you want to say it, sadness, free. You can be totally free of all that stuff and use it in a great way. Now, going to the question about catalog backups, something that's been tossed around a lot. Okay, let me show you all what we're talking about real quick here. Bring up my catalog here. I've been using Lightroom for, probably whenever Lightroom 1 came out, I started using it. I still launch Lightroom by going to the external hard drive and double clicking on it. It's the only fail-safe way to do it. I'm not telling you this because you're starting off and you need to do it. It's the way you do it. You just be sure. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. We can ignore this whole thing. This is just to make it ask me now here. Go here, go here. Every once in a while, Lightroom's going to ask you this question. And it's defaulting to asking you this once a week. It's going to say backup catalog. And this is a big thing. This is something that I'm glad came up. It's an important thing to address. There's an issue in the world these days that people don't read words when they're on a computer screen. Like what you do is you see this big blue button that says backup. You think, oh, backup, that must be good. Let's click on it. And sure, it's good. Like this is a good thing to click on. We should click the word backup, but we got to understand what's going on, okay? So I can guarantee you, if you use Lightroom for more than a week, this will prompt you about a week into using the program. It's set to pop up once a week. What this is saying is, that little catalog file. Now, when I say catalog, remember, we're talking about 3 things. We're talking about the pointers to your images, the locations of your images, the previews, and the changes you make to your photos. Those are the 3 things that the catalog does, okay? This is saying, hey, you need to back up your catalog, which essentially means take those 3 things that's stored in that catalog file and put them somewhere else. Make a second copy of them. By default, and I'm going to hit the word backup here to show you what it does. By default, goes pretty quick. It puts a folder in the Your Name Lightroom catalog folder called Backups. And inside of Backups, there's a today's date and time, and there is a copy of my catalog as it was right now when I just hit the word backup. Okay. Now, if I take this hard drive and I stomp on it or destroy it or burn it or do anything to it, we're still going to lose all my copies of my catalog because it just backed it up to the same external hard drive. There's nothing new here. So this whole backup button, that whole thing that prompts you and says, do you want to back up your catalog? It's not to save you from your hard drive crashing or from you losing your hard drive or something like that. What it's to save you from is sometimes catalogs go corrupted. They turn bad, and they just one day you'll open them up and Lightroom will say, hey, your catalog is corrupted. Congratulations, you can't use the program anymore. And this way you can go in and say, hey, I still want to use my program. And you can go in and pull an old version of your catalog. And you can see it's just a little zip file containing my catalog as it was, exactly 1 minute ago when I backed up. And once a week it asks you to do this. And when you see that, just hit the backup button, and it'll make a little duplicate of your catalog file. It'll put it on the same drive, and that way if your catalog ever goes corrupted, you can go back and kind of refer back to a previous version. All right, well, thank you all. It's been fun.
Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City Superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.